come on. Hey, feel the rhythm. It's getting from the deepest of your soul. Now, use your senses, and everything will be easier than before. Keep on moving, funk is coming. Blind yourself, big. You'll become the star in this die. Spread your wings, fly to me. Funk is coming.
I'm here with Jefferson. I'm not even trying to pronounce the rest of your nick. You do that because it's Spatchcock. I'm doing that right?
That's it.
There you
That's
go.
Yep.
So this is kind of different, and the main reason is because I actually met Jefferson once, and then I watched some of his videos. And I said, "Oh, that seems like an interesting dude." So I basically know nothing about you. I mean, compared to the other guys that I talked to, I mean, I knew them a little bit. Some of them a little bit more than a little bit. But I thought that might be interesting for some questions that I wanted to ask, and you might be, the right person. But before doing that, just tell me a little bit about you, because again,
Okay. Yeah, I started off. I'm relatively new, at least to doing videos on YouTube. My channel's only been around since I think the date is actually November of 2019. So I opened this channel up right before COVID hit, or just as it was like popping up in China when the news started coming out. I had other YouTube channels where I did hangouts or joined hangouts. My brother kind of pulled me into this. Um, So he's to credit or to blame, depending on your perspective, I suppose. Um, and yeah, I got into it because he was already talking to people in sort of the quote unquote great debate community. He had conversations with Steve McRae, Ozymandias Ramses, a few people like that. In fact, I think Jay used to. That's my brother's name and part of his YouTube handle. He was on MK's channel quite a bit. I think back when MK was still doing stuff and was kind of a hub for people like Darth Dawkins and Beckel and people like that. So yeah, I got involved in that. He kind of pulled me, like he got into watching things like the Atheist Experience and stuff like that, and I wasn't really all that into that. But he kind of pulled me in, and then yeah, I started doing that a little bit. Did a lot of late night hangouts and things like that. Have been drunk on streams, YouTube and drinking more times than I should have. Definitely more times than I should have. And yeah, about 8-9 months ago, well, maybe 10 months ago now, I started. The reason I think my channel started getting the subscribers it was getting, I started engaging with a YouTube apologist named Otangelo. He's a guy from Brazil. I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh
but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So we started chatting back and forth because Otangelo was telling people that he was having these sort of like semi-private chats with Darth Dawkins, and Darth Dawkins was sending him literature, and we started chatting about it, and he started kind of forwarding on the suggestions to me. So I started reading them, and we had discussions, and we ended up doing a video where we reviewed it. And then at some point, like I don't know what happened. I started watching Tom Rabbit's videos because he was usually profiling either Darth Dawkins or Jay Robin and a few of these other people, and I started doing commentary video on them. And I had a couple of crosses with couple encounters. I had an encounter with Darth Dawkins that actually got featured in one of the Tom Rabbit videos, and I don't know if that I can credit that or not. I don't. That might just be a coincidence. But anyway, it started building an audience because I just started kind of covering that. So that's been it for the last.
So yeah, I mean, so a couple of things. Well, first of all, I have to have a word with your brother because I mean, he was involved with the MK, and regardless, is suggested to you, that might be a good idea. So
Right.
the first question to me would be, what have you done to your brother? Because that is. But anyway,
I promise you the hurt is so deep, so traumatic that he can't possibly talk about it in public. But yeah, no, rest assured, he will never forgive me, and he is constantly looking for ways to extract
yeah, I mean,
a payment from me.
there must be a serious family feud, between you. I don't want to get into, but yeah, it's got to be deep, man.
On
Anyways,
on the surface, everything's pleasant. We seem simpatico as hell, but yeah, deep down, I suspect an enormous amount of resentment because
yeah,
he keeps introducing me to people that are just,
right. I
the
mean, really,
bane of my existence. But I didn't know MK. I mean, everybody, like, if you say MK to a certain people, they'll just like just outwardly groan. I've only seen some older videos of him, but I don't know that I ever interacted with him. But my brother assures me, as well as anybody else, like, yeah, that those were frustrating times. That was a
oh yeah, I mean, if you want to trigger your brother, just show up with a bottle of tea and just put it, close to his desk. He know exactly what I'm talking about.
okay. I'll
Yeah,
ask him about that.
he will know that. Yeah, just 2 or 3 bottles and just put them, tea. It's got well, tea or something yellow. He will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
So okay, you said something interesting. So because I saw some of your videos and I kind of like your style. There's something about it that I want to talk about. But um, the videos that I saw might have been the most recent ones. Recent one, I don't know. They're mostly kind of, I would say, reaction videos or stuff like that. It's usually you and some other guy, that you invite every so often, and you try to
Yeah.
examine. But you said at the beginning you were actually involved directly with Otangelo. You said, and some other people. So you had a proper conversation, discussions with them,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so. My question to you would be, is it a choice by you that you're doing now these kind of videos because of what you did before? So is it something that you feel you can do it better? Is it something, that why is that? I mean, why going from engaging with a person one on one to reaction videos? And before you reply, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, because the most common thing that people might tell, to you or to I mean, even Tom Rabbit, people like that is, well, see, I mean, these guys are taking the easy way. They're not confronting the person directly, and they're just, doing that stuff while it's not there, but they don't have the guts, to engage the people. That would be, the I think the critique from some of the person. So why is that? Explain to me the process, because this is fascinating to me. It's been going along a lot with a lot of people. Some of them are really successful. I mean, Tom Rabbit is big, is huge with that kind of thing, even if he's doing things a little bit differently than you. I mean, he doesn't even, he is not really engaging that much, but it's, sometimes it just, takes videos from other, but again, I'm rambling. You understand my question? Can you, is
Yeah.
there a, yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, because like with Tom Rabbit, I think he's engaging more now. Maybe, I mean, he did on his Discord channel back in the day, and now that he's done kind of the mining the content where he was recording snippets of conversations he was hearing from Discord or clips that he was getting from other people. With my stuff, I did engage with people initially, but it was people that like I said, I encountered in my time. My brother was kind of my guide, right? And so it started with, like, jumping into like a live chat Jesus is Lord is hosting, or jumping into, clicking on the stream that Praise I Am had, or something like that, and then talking to some of those people, and usually getting muted and kicked. And I actually did debate some of those people. Gavin Hurleman, who's a regular with Praise I Am, and I think he's pretty frequently with Smoky Saint, another YouTuber. I've debated him twice. One of the debates was hosted by Standing for Truth, and then the other debate was hosted by Richard Madsen. Um, and so, yeah, I've engaged with him quite a bit, and Gavin will usually, well, at least he used to. I don't know how prone he is to doing it now, but he likes to he likes to engage in a semi-structured debate. But a lot of the other guys, like if I had a conversation with them, they often wouldn't go anywhere. Darth Dawkins confronted me a couple of times after the one video where he came into my stream while I was doing a criticism video of how he was behaving on Canadian Catholic's channel. He came in and tried to quiz me, and I chatted with him, and then he got ticked off and he left. The whole exchange lasts maybe 12, 15 minutes. And then it was a little while later we ran into each other on like praise of channel, had some conversations and stuff. And on those ones, I'm not exactly sure what happened because those were really late night streams, and I was a little partied up, unfortunately. So I'd had a little bit to drink, and I don't quite remember the context of the entire conversation, but so those ones could have been flubbed. But no, generally, like after a while, the offers to engage just kind of quit. If they think that it's kind of weird, if you stick to your guns, and you're honest with them, and you're like, no, I'm not convinced by your argument. Let's keep going. At some point, they get frustrated, and then they just accuse you of being dishonest and then stop. And so, what I started realizing, I was kind of wasting my time with that, because when I got involved in some of this stuff, I was interested in finding answers to things like precept arguments, and I didn't see a lot of good examples of it, with the exception of things like stuff from like Floyd FP or Ozymandias. But those were few and far between, and so I kind of wanted to provide the kind of commentary that I wanted to see back when I was starting out, and Precept was really scratching at my brain.
So yeah, so basically you're telling me, that you try to engage, but it was always the same conversation, and
Kind of, yeah.
and you feel that it's more, it's probably, well, not mature, but you can drive your point better if you make a reaction to what they say, because they're basically saying the same things to everybody, so it doesn't really matter if they're talking to you or to somebody else. They're the same arguments, it's the same script, the same stuff, so at a certain point it becomes useless.
Yeah, and you get the advantage of being able to remove yourself from it, so you can kind of like examine it forensically, because you're going to see them essentially push the same argument from different angles, and they're going to try to use different rhetorical. Oh, some of them approach it as rhetorical techniques. Not all of them. I think Darth is definitely guilty of that, because he has like a kind of a structured script. It's I don't think I've met anybody, with with the exception of Jesus is Lord, who's like as obnoxious as Darth Dawkins, but kind of wings it. Like Jesus is Lord kind of does, but he contradicts himself quite often. So, but yeah, guys like Darth or something like that definitely have a script. And so, yeah, and you can tell just from observing them, like if I'm having a conversation, especially with Darth Dawkins, but even with Jay Robin, I've noticed that with the exception of your personality really bothering them, what you hear from them is more or less the same. So if they'll only talk to you for 5 or 6 minutes, but they'll talk to somebody else for 60 minutes, you can see a lot more of where they're going, and kind of flesh that out. So yeah, I just found the reaction videos were a little bit more. I had more to work with there than
Right.
kind of sitting there in the hot seat.
No, I understand. I mean, I was just curious because your
Yeah,
approach
no.
it's something that a lot of people is doing, and there might be different motivation behind it. So I was curious, to hear from somebody which is actually doing that right now. That is his core format, if I can say. So another question, but then I want to jump back to something that you said before. What kind of background do you personally have? I mean, without giving too much away or giving away whatever you want. What kind of background do you have on these kind of topics? Is it something that you just were interested and you looked by itself? Is it something more specific to your line of study? What you've done?
A little bit. I have a bachelor's degree, but I don't have any advanced degrees in anything. And other than that, I'm just kind of an office worker, a civil servant, bureaucrat, that kind of thing. But I've always been interested in politics and religion, and I was raised Christian. I was raised in there were kind of two major churches that left an impact on me during my childhood, the two that my parents were involved in the most while I was growing up. And so I was a believer until about the age of 30, and that's around about the time when I had what I guess could qualify as a deconversion moment. I think I'd been steadily deconverting, for a few years before that, but no, that was about it. And then I just started getting interested in I'd read a little bit from different atheist, writers and stuff. I read a little bit of Hitchens. I never read Richard Dawkins. Um, but yeah, that was stuff that always kind of intrigued me. Even when I was a little kid, I was kind of interested in the Bible and Bible stories. And I was a really weird kid because I was interested in theology, which very few, kids between the ages of 12 and 14 are interested in theology. I kind of was. But then, yeah, once it kind of shifted and I kind of lost my faith, I kind of stayed with that for a little bit, and I probably would have just let it go completely. I probably wouldn't have gotten reinvigorated into it had I not seen. Um, Somebody showed me a debate between Christopher Hitchens and Douglas Wilson when they were doing a North American tour of debates, and Douglas Wilson pulled a kind of precept argument on Christopher Hitchens, and it kind of took Hitchens a little by surprise. And I was working with somebody, he and I would stupidly get into religious discussions at work, but he showed it to me, and I was like, that's a really odd argument. And then I started finding out that Douglas Wilson wasn't the only people that were doing that. Douglas Wilson kind of reverted to that argument after, I don't know, after a little bit. But there were people all over YouTube, not all over. There was this weird, niche people that were doing this sort of as a hobby, and that's kind of where that started. So I started getting really focused on like uh, more obscure Christian apologetics. But
Is
that's really my only background. I don't. Yeah, it's just
is there a story behind your the conversion, or is it just boring and
nothing real special. No, I mean I never the 30 years or so that I was a believer, I never really doubted the existence of God. I had friends and stuff, and we got into the briefest of discussions about whether or not they believed it or not, but it never really bothered me. I did have issues with aspects of organized religion because I grew up in two churches where adults got into these contentious issues over things like tithing and whether or not you're allowed to go to movies or not and all this kind of stuff, and it literally broke them apart. So I was always kind of I was a little gun shy about that kind of thing, but I never doubted the existence of God. It wasn't until later that in my 30s I started doing more uh, reading and stuff like that. And then one day I just kind of realized, like, I'm not really convinced that this is real. And coming to that realization was kind of like I remember feeling the sense of relief, like, oh yeah, I guess
so
I don't believe that. And that was it.
so you touch precept, several times, and we've had several conversations with some other people previously about that line of reasoning.
Yeah.
I'm being super generous here. What yeah. What is your take on that? Your personal take on that? What did you? I mean, what was your reaction? What pops in your mind if I tell you precept?
My first reaction to it, I can tell you right away, it was pure unadulterated like anger. The first time I heard it used, I thought that is the most manipulative, question begging, openly fallacious way to address an issue that I'd ever heard, and it was just couched in this sort of sanctimonious, self-righteous horseshit. And I thought, you know, if
It's a really moderate point of view. Love it. Yeah, carry on.
I wasn't sure, given previous conversations with you, Fabi, I wasn't sure if horseshit was going to be
Yeah,
something I
no,
could say.
it's good enough. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard worse. So yeah.
Maybe not strong enough. No, I saw it and I always thought like at best it was always used in kind of a very passive aggressive way, and I thought it was kind of shitty. And then I started seeing these guys literally tell people who were skeptics or Buddhists or anything like that that they couldn't make intelligible sentences. And at that point, I mean, the first time I think I heard that from somebody, I think it was that I can't remember what his name. I always forget his name, but he was around early on, skinny guy, Jesus hair, kind of weird beard. Um, but Colin something, I think was his name.
Oh yeah. I think yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Collins, and he was just being
Yeah.
super obnoxious about it. And he made some comment like, Blue sleeps faster than Wednesdays or something like that. Whatever, like everybody was using the same damn one. And I don't know if they cribbed it from Greg Bonson or what. And
He was.
my,
I think he was one of the first Seitan clones.
yeah,
That's how we used to address these guys. Yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, Christopher knows exactly who you're talking to. about. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that might
the
be an interesting.
cyclones.
Yeah, no, but especially that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, when I heard that, I think I rolled my eyes so hard I almost like passed out. Like I was like, that is the most addle-brained thing I've ever seen. Like, what a pathetic maneuver. And at that point, then I was hooked. So I kind of like I blame him and I thank him because it led to me like, okay, I got to figure out where they're getting this from. And I started digging into Presup, and then I started finding out that like there's some slight differences. There's sort of the Greg Bonson style Psi 10 Bruggen-Kate Presup, which is sort of weaponized for shutting up atheists. And then there's sort of the grounding of it, which is sort of a mutation on a modal ontological argument and a tag argument combined with Calvinist theology. And either one of them, I think, are really, really problematic. The fact that they appeal to so many kind of younger Christian men who seem to want to get radicalized online in their Christianity is telling.
Uh, who is the most obnoxious atheist you've ever met online?
The most obnoxious. Um, I don't in terms of like ones that I've met.
Or, okay, let me phrase that. If you don't want to address a specific name, just the most obnoxious category of atheists you've met online. Let me give you a little bit of an escape
A
route.
little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think, I don't know. I probably would get, well, I don't know. Amongst Christians, I might get classified as one of the more obnoxious or dishonest or whatever. Uh, the ones that I see where I think that it might be the most problematic would be the ones that have a solid background in philosophy, um, but aren't, um, but aren't particularly charitable about how they approach some of those philosophical arguments with Christians or even with Muslims, and there's always kind of a caveat to that because oftentimes they might be dealing with an apologist who's very, you know, uh, gung ho and it seems very confident, and they're rolling and they sound very certain of a lot of theological claims and making some kind of statements that philosophically aren't meshing up. And then the philosophical guy comes in there and wants to check them, and it's sort of a way to kind of stomp on them, right? It's sort of like two bullies like checking each other, and one of them strong in this religious area and this one's strong in the philosophy area, and they're not going to stop until one makes the other cry. I think those two particular that dynamic, that kind of apologist and that kind of it's not even a person. I think it's more of a motivation. If you're a skeptic and you're motivated by using like philosophical stuff, philosophical arguments or philosophical nomenclature as a weapon to show up or own a Christian apologist online, um, I think that adds to the problem because that's why so many of them now go and they run to SEP, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. They run to the whatever.
Yeah,
They read as much
yeah.
philosophy as they need to weaponize that and use it against somebody else later on. So the idea is, I mean, philosophy is supposed to be at least this thought process designed around opening up, asking questions, even questions that don't have pat answers, especially those ones. Hopefully it's a discipline to encourage people to be more thoughtful. I think if skeptics are trying to use it in a way, like in that way, as a cudgel, they're kind of weaponizing it themselves, and then they don't really have anybody. They only have themselves to blame when believers start using it that way. I think it's okay. So.
Why do you think, or if you think, but if you agree, I mean, why do you think there are not so many women engaged in this, conversation environment?
I think it's pretty. I don't know. Well, a lot of the personalities involved are pretty toxic. And even on the atheist side, there's been enough. I mean, what happened with the non-sec channel, non sequitur show between Kyle and Steve McRae, I didn't follow that closely. But watching that acrimony blow up and then seeing some of the stuff that there's the fallout from other things that Steve McRae had gotten himself involved in, there've been other issues with allegations against Matt Dillahunty, David Silverman, Lawrence Krauss, those things came up, in terms of like either sexual inappropriateness or sexual impropriety somewhere. Um, I don't know. It seems like, and in a lot of things, I think women probably should be more involved in the conversation because um, I think they're going to approach it more like a conversation and less like a contest to win. Um, but I think this only attracts a minority of people anyway. The fact that the majority of them are male, I think is mostly because I think a lot of the guys that it attracts probably have that syndrome, somebody's wrong on the internet kind of thing. I don't know how many women get that. I think that might be more males might be more prone to that, and that's why they're doing this. And the women are just like, let it go. You got better things to do. Like, if they're wrong, they're wrong. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably it. But on top of it, it doesn't take very long to watch some of those conversations, and some of those rooms just get really obnoxious. I remember trying when somebody was telling me to get on Discord when Google Plus was dying out, and I've heard about Discord for the first time from Dragnaut Silvas because he was shifting his stuff over
Yeah.
to that, and I started going in there and listening to some of the conversations. It was like the last time my jaw had dropped that much was maybe the first time I heard my younger brother using Xbox Live back in the day, and hearing like 10 and 12-year-olds call each other, every racial slur you could hear repeatedly. And Discord was some of those Discord rooms are just like that. I'm like, okay, like this is hell on earth. So yeah, no, I think most people should avoid that stuff.
So you we talked about a little bit about at the beginning of your attitude, your mo in making videos and things like that. Where we talked about reaction videos and things like that. So I'm imagining you might be the right person to ask this question, and the question would be, what is, in your opinion, the state of the conversation today? Where it's going? What are the main reasons why, or the main arguments that are treated? But just in general, what do you think about it?
I think more and more of it is getting kind of like from the Christian side of things, I think it's getting more radicalized, at least the ones that are kind of hanging out on it. So the attitude has shifted from, instead of like, hey, let's talk about my belief system and versus your belief system, it's more, and this goes to some of the sort of the hard-edged ones, Darth Dawkins, Jay Robin, where they're literally asking people, hey, they're treating them as if, and I get this. In fact, I just had a discussion with them last week and over the weekend. Like, well, you just showed up and said that there is no God, so how do you justify that claim? As if I walked into a village of complete naive people, uninformed about anything. I walked in there and told them, hey, there's this concept called God, and it doesn't exist, by the way. And then I offer them no proof. It's like, no, that's not what's happening. The claim for the existence of this God and these arguments goes back, millennia, and people have always wrestled with different aspects of it. And now what I see online, especially from people who are, if they're American, it's some of it is wrapped up in political identity. So I think there's something to be said about that. Uh, you probably know this. The U.S. there's a real connection between Christianity and hard right, alt right, right wing nationalist kind of tendencies, and some of that is coming out. Where I think a lot of these guys are operating on the idea that what they need to do is they need to identify the skeptic, and then they need to cleanse. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the country needs an internal cleanse, and then it needs an external expansion. Good old-fashioned fascism. But it's got like a cross and a smiling Jesus photo with it. So that's the worst case scenario. The other stuff I think is just kind of grounded in the fact that it's kind of fallen apart. I don't see or hear from a lot of people that are talking about their church experience if they're Christian. They're not talking about their congregations. They're not talking about being there for people within that congregation, the fellowship that they have. I hear them showing up with a new argument that they glean from Frank Turek or Greg Koukl, and trying to twist around and get somebody convinced that Jesus rose from the dead. And it's like, okay, um, it's a game for a lot of them, and I think that's the aspect that attracted a lot of like people like me, frankly, who
Hmm.
like argument, like debate, and we're kind of surprised at like these guys, like they're very sure of themselves, but they're talking out of their asses. So it's like, all right, see what we can do.
So yeah, you also mentioned before that among your interests there is politics. Have you got any plans about it? I don't know, making your own videos, um, making reaction videos to some other topics which involve more closely politics, or is just something that you keep to yourself because that is another can of worms that I don't want to open. I've already enough of this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I could. I mean, I'm really left wing, so I don't think that I would run into a lot of. And I guess I don't know that I'm woke. I think that's kind of a term somebody else has to give to me. Um,
Sorry, I got to interrupt you. Before you go on, I mean, you as an American saying that you're a left wing means that for me as an European, you're at best, center. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, yeah. One of these days, I mean, what if the pandemic is on its way? My goal is to go over to Europe and see if I can like dip my toe in a little bit of that socialism and see how I react to it. I did
Oh
get a
yeah,
little.
it's mental around here. I mean, it's communists and socialists everywhere. I mean, childrens are eaten in the streets. Yeah, it's mental. Yeah, you don't want to go there. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea, like, I used to be a libertarian, like, and yeah, yeah. I shouldn't have admitted that. So, co-
Okay.
so getting
Okay,
back into
brother. I mean, we've done crazy things before. We've all done that. It's okay. I forgive you. But
I
yeah.
like that you're pushing away from the desk, like, I had no idea, and if I had known.
No, well, I was relieved in a way that you said I used to be because I honestly do not want to have a conversation with a libertarian. I honestly don't want to. Because,
That's understandable.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's personal because I've engaged with some, libertarians, and you get to a point in the conversation, and I mean, I'm talking personally, where you start questioning yourself and you start questioning yourself in ways such as, okay, am I am I not making myself clear enough, or am I missing something which is so obvious that I got to have brain injury because I can't see that. So
Yeah.
I just say, you know what? I don't get it. I've tried my best. I don't get it. I've got to a point where I know where the conversation will go, and I know that eventually I'll get to a point where I'll just have to give up because
Yeah.
fuck it. But yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, that's why I was making like this.
Yeah, no, coming up, I mean, my folks when I was a kid, they probably would have been classified as fundamentalist Christians. They homeschooled us because the schools are that's a way for Satan to get you. So we were homeschooled for years. I have a lot of brothers and sisters, and so we were a few of us ended up going to public school here and there, but almost all of us just K through 12, right straight through. We were homeschooled, and that led to some problems because I mean I'm dating myself, but I was homeschooled at a time when the internet was not popular, right, and not readily available. So resources were at a minimum. I grew up in a small town on the outskirts of a not so big city. Not great. So yeah, was pretty insulated. Grew up very conservative socially, theologically, and politically. And then by the time I got into my formative teen years, kind of thing, around about that time, there was somebody that was hitting the mainstream named Rush Limbaugh, that I thought I thought he made a lot of sense. But I started at that time. I started reading a lot of different people, and I think that was actually around about the time that I first started reading Christopher Hitchens, because Christopher Hitchens, I'd only read his political stuff, and so I read some of his like articles and on the Clintons and stuff like that. But yeah, so anyway, long story short, got into college, was still politically conservative in college. Not a great look, not a smart move, really easy way to stay away to keep women away from you. and stayed that way but after studying in Mexico, living and studying in Japan, going through multiple financial, hiccups like, the Lehman shock crash and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I slowly shifted and started doing a lot more reading and decided, you know what, I've been opinionated and right wing for a long time and against socialized medicine and social welfare. I'm going to start reading and seeing if maybe there's something to this. And the more I read both sides.
Yeah.
The more I read, the more I realized that, okay, these people that know what they're talking about advocate these things, and then there's these other people who are literally screaming in black and white, like all font, all cap font, like, socialism is murder. Like, okay, so that was easy, and then I just shifted over that way. So that actually happened before. Maybe there is something to socialism because that shift happened before I gave
Right.
up on God. But I think that actually helped though, because I think once I realized like I'd been sold a pack of lies about a lot of right wing politics, it started making it easier to question the cultural baggage that was supposed to be so important to being a traditional Christian and having that stuff too. And I was like, yeah, most of this stuff is sort of
Yeah,
shit.
no, but I mean, I understand your point. If you grew up the way that you grew up, in the way you described, it's easy to 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 feel and think that you are right, regardless of what everybody else in the world is doing. It's the
Right.
approach. It's the same approach to someone tell you, okay, eat shit because billions and billions of flies cannot be wrong. So that
Right.
that that would be the approach that, oh yeah, everybody's doing that, but they're all eating shit because they're flies, and I'm just a fucking whatever. Not that. So, but then I mean, no, but, so I get the approach, and I also get the fact, that you just think, okay, maybe they're not eating shit, maybe there's some cake there. So yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it was frustrating. I mean, because I made a lot of mistakes. It took a lot of shaming to get me out of it. I mean, if you're a college kid and you end up at a party with a group of Canadians and you get drunk enough and you start going off on a drunken rant about why, and I thought at the time that I actually believed this. I still have no idea why I took this side. Had to get into a heated conversation about affirmative action in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and the Canadians and like everybody leaves the table, and
Yeah.
I don't realize why. And it's like, oh yeah, and it's not until like yeah, that happens to you a handful of times and you realize, yeah, your politics are toxic. They don't offer solutions. They just fuck people's lives up. And
Right.
it's not until you start looking into the alternatives. That's one example. Like as far as affirmative action goes, that argument is all over the place. But it was the way that I approached it that kind of like, I'm 22 and a white male, so I can get of course I'm right about this. I don't know
Oh
shit
yeah,
about
yeah,
anything.
yeah.
I don't know shit about anything, but I'm convinced that yeah, right wing libertarian free market economics, that's the way to go.
Yeah,
And if
trickle
it's and
down
it
economics is
yeah,
fantastic.
oh,
It has
yeah,
to work, right? I mean, it makes
yeah,
total sense. Yes.
yep,
No, I get it. Yeah. No,
yep,
I mean, well, I can tell you, man, I mean, it takes balls I get to a certain point. I mean, regardless of the process you try to describe, well, you try to rationalize things and you just, discover. But there is when you just make the step over the cliff, you go in the opposite directions. I mean, that step takes balls, and I think that, I mean, my experience, with people, that they shifted from position to position, is that most of the times it's even more difficult. That change is way more difficult than uh, a deconversion process from a religion, which is not a cult. I mean, we're not talking about crazy stuff. I,
yeah,
again, from what I see, people telling stories like you, stuff like that. That is way more difficult because you get to a point that you have to say, okay, if this makes sense, I was wrong, and that is not an easy step to make, every so often.
yeah. And I was wrong like 9.9 times out of 10.
Right.
Yeah, I just get to look back at like, 12 years of outspoken political advocacy and be like, Jesus, what a moron. Like I was a moron and I wasted over a decade talking about this shit. And I slowly lost I lost confidence in it studying abroad and spending time in other countries, and then finally it was just like it was a strain on me trying, you try to maintain that, and you just think like, yeah, no, these politics will work, and it's all about purity and identity and nonsense. So I never got so right wing that I had a Reagan tattoo, or God forbid like a swastika or something somewhere. But
Jesus Christ Almighty. Okay, you went
now
that deep into that, huh? Okay.
I was one of those guys like I don't know if you know the show Parks and Recreation, Ron Swanson.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I was that libertarian. None of that stuff was a joke to me. Like, I mean, he's obviously an exaggeration of that, and that I was that right wing. Like, no government, everything's just businesses, everything's just private. Just let the market decide all that.
Right.
Yep, I guzzled that Kool-Aid. I was completely enamored with it, and now it's just like I look back at that and like, man, if I had had access to just like about a dozen books, just about a dozen different pieces, and not left-wing ones, like a
Hmm.
mix. I would have been able to read those, and I probably would have reached a similar conclusion a lot earlier. But
Maybe listening to how you talk about this stuff, maybe you should give a thought about doing something about politics. In videos and things like that. That is just my personal opinion, but given the way that you talk about it, it transpires to me that you're both passionate and realistic of
yeah,
you can
uh,
still see the old horizon, even the one which was behind you, and you can still see that.
yeah,
It's not okay. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Listen, man, it's 40 minutes in, approximately 35, stuff like that.
yep.
So now I'm going to ask you the three questions that I ask people to send me that they want me to ask them. So those are your
Uh,
three questions. I try to stay away from the
yeah.
question during the conversation. The third one might be something that we already talked about, but I will ask you anyway. And if it gets, if you feel that the points that are repeated, I got some emergency questions here. Something like have you ever tried to suck your own cock or stuff like that. So anyway, so
Oh,
every
only the essential questions you
oh
mean.
yeah, 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 yeah. Fuck it, yeah. Come on. So yeah, let's cut to the chase here. Come on. That's what people want to know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is coffee or tea?
It's got to be tea. It's weird. I love both, but tea actually, like, maybe it's because I'm getting older, but like coffee ramps me up quite a bit. Tea is has I've gotten to the point now where tea is a nice Zen kind of thing. And like I said, I lived in Japan for quite a while. I really got hooked on like Japanese green tea,
Right.
and it just consumed. At one point, there was one day I consumed so much of it, I thought I was gonna like travel in time or something. I just got like completely. I don't know if you can get obliterated on caffeine, but I damn near did. So yeah, it's been tea for a long
I
time. I used to be somebody who could, in my early 20s, I would drink an entire pot of coffee. But thanks to Japan, yeah,
I know there
tea
might
all the
be
way
two
now.
or three Brits that watch this, so let's freak them out and tell us how you make tea.
Oh, well, given that the U.S. has like kind of
I know,
weird
I
market, yeah,
know.
we have and most people drink tea in the shittiest ways. So if I can get loose leaf, I try to make it in a pot. Normally, what I end up having is like a strainer and a large cup, and I try to make it that way. I have an electric kettle, put the water on to boil. Um, right now, actually, what I've got in my pantry is Taylor's Scottish breakfast tea, which, from what I understand, makes a good builder's tea. Lots of cream, lots of milk and sugar. I don't really take my tea that way. I take it black, but it's in the tea bags. So drop that water off the boil, add that to it, 5 minutes, and of course, get the bag out of there, and then sip that. So.
It was just to piss them off, because after Brexit they deserve to be pissed off. Anyway,
Well, I will tell you this though, because the one thing is like if they're making it in the tea and they've got the tea set and everything, splash of milk before you pour the tea in, or tea and then the splash of milk. I'm a splash of milk first person,
okay,
so come get me, people.
yeah, there you go.
You don't have to stir it as much. You just splash it in there, and then
Yeah. Okay, listen, your next step is you're going to put the water in a cup and put it in the microwave. So that will freak the fuck out of them. Okay.
That's dangerous. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
Okay, second question. What do you think of pineapple on pizza?
It is disgusting. It's a crime. It should be illegal. Um, any food snob that I've ever heard, like I think Gordon Ramsay is against it. There's a bunch of other like you know, celebrity chefs that come out against it. I think even Bourdain, he was like, no, that's disgusting. I get the idea behind it, but the idea of having an acidic fruit-based sauce, tomatoes, especially if they're good, and then throwing chopped up acidic fruit on top of that, which has an enzyme in it that starts to digest cheese, is a stupid idea. That's disgusting. So that's my take.
Okay, fair enough. So the third question. I'm not getting there,
I can I ask a follow-up question on that question?
Yeah.
Is that a popular topping in Italy? Do you guys
No.
do? Does any? Okay, I just wanted to check.
No.
Whew, whew, okay.
We just so there is a not far from where I live. There is a pizzeria which has been constantly for about, I think, the last 10 years, has been constantly in the top 20 pizza in Italy. So I mean, this guy is really good, and he makes a pizza with pineapple. The way he makes that, though, I mean, I can't remember exactly the ingredients, but lo and behold, the pineapple is not actually, slices of pineapple. It's like a foam of pineapple, and then there is some I mean, there's some other. I mean, it's really intense. Okay, I mean, that guy doesn't take ingredients over there, and it took him years to figure that out. So you can do that, but again, it makes sense what you said. I mean, the moment you make the foam, you take away the acidity, so you just have the flavor. It's totally different. It's totally complete. It just made that because he said, you know what, I've got to make one, but I got to make one which tastes good, which is not the way that slice of pineapple and put it on pizza. Because yeah, I'm with you. And again, around here nobody cares. Because I mean, if you want some restaurants got them on the menu, and if you want them, I mean, they will make it to you. But again, it's
Not
not.
many people do that.
Well, I mean, they just make it to you, and 9 times out of 10, you might not either pay for that because they got pity on you. So yeah, I mean, this guy is yeah, fucking. I mean, he's already suffered a lot. I mean, he doesn't deserve to pay. That's on me, man. I mean, if that's your way of punishing yourself, yeah, you got to have a lot of problems. So there you go. That's on me. The third question, and this is the question I said that maybe we talked about it before, but it's up to you. It's actually a little bit difficult because the angle I think is different. So the third question is, what motivates you to analyze and criticize religious argument? Because I mean, we talked about the fact that you do. You talked about the fact why you prefer that instead of direct confrontation or things like that. But I think the motivation is a little bit deeper. So I think it's still a good question. So what would be your motivations?
Yeah, I kind of got. Yeah, I did start to kind of answer this earlier on. In that, for me, when I was looking for sort of critical videos critical of presup and things like that. I didn't find a lot of them. I would catch snippets. I would find videos that would be 3.5, 4 hour long hangouts, and there might be somebody in there in the course of that exchange that would make some interesting exchange. But you had to go through this huge video to do it. And I thought, it might be. I would like to see somebody do a video where they look at this debate or look at this discussion and kind of like break it down as to, and then kind of give their opinion, like why doesn't this work? What part does work? That kind of thing. And so I sort of made the kinds of videos that I think I was looking for that I kind of felt were missing. It wasn't that that people weren't doing that. There were people that did great breakdowns of precept, like Floyd FP and Ozymandias. But occasionally they would get into stuff that would still be, you know, you get a couple videos or you get like one explainer and that you'd have like a dozen questions and not really know how to do it. But I started following along because the more I cover, the more I can kind of explain, and the more likely I am to catch different angles. So that's the big thing. And the second thing is that I think that whatever is going on with these guys that are doing the precept arguments, I think that that kind of like style of Christianity has to be checked. Our country has a real problem with religiosity in general, and even though it's shrinking and the number of nons and unaffiliated people are growing, it's kind of making the still a lot of the Christians here a little crazy. Some of them are more liberal and more welcoming of things like LGBTQ community and things like that, but a lot of the other ones that are still kind of holding on to the old ways, so to speak, won't give it up, and they're getting a lot more. They're getting angry. They're electing people that will pass things like "Don't Say Gay" laws or trans exclusionary stuff, or they don't want to deal with critical race theory in classrooms because they think that the teacher's doing it. It's just it's fascinating to me that a group of people are very concerned about their kids getting brainwashed in school in public school, but then will send their kids to Sunday school and church on a weekend where they're basically like, I don't want my kid to have 8 ounces of Kool-Aid of that in school, but I will make them guzzle buckets of indoctrination and insanity every weekend. So that's kind of why I do what I do, because I think they're going to keep doing this. Christianity is a lot like porn in the United States. They look to get into every avenue, every medium that they can, magazines, TV, internet. If you let them talk, they will try to monopolize as much as they can, and they don't really want criticism. They deserve all the criticism they can get, and there are a lot of people out there that are susceptible to some of the horseshit that they're marketing, and they need a counterpoint, because the more that's counterbalanced, I think the better society will be. That's what
Yeah.
motivates me.
I mean, I understand your point, and to further going further on what you were saying, I got to tell you that when I when I started watching these videos, and getting into them, I'm talking about more than 10 years ago. One of the things which I could not wrap my head around was the fact that there were people which were so radical in about religion, and I'm talking about the U.S. So from my perspective, I mean, when I found out that there is actual people, I mean, real persons, that they believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old, they believe that religion is flawed, they believe. I mean, I was just like blown the fuck away. I mean, I knew these people existed. But I thought, the same way that I knew that there were, stories of Spider-Man, but there were comics. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
and then I met them, and it took me quite some time to actually, process the fact that there were a lot of these people, like a lot. And I gotta tell you, man, at the beginning, when I was listening to people from the US, debating religion and stuff like that, I was thinking, okay, why the fuck are you engaging with those stupid? I mean, that is not the point, that is literally not the point. The real points about religions are, are different, the ones that I live in, with the approach is different. But then I realized that actually this thing was way bigger than I thought. There's some areas where that is actually a problem, like a massive problem, and it is the problem. So yeah, I feel what you say, and now I think I'm understanding that your point of view a little bit better. I mean, but I got to tell you, I mean, like 10 years ago, I would have laughed at your face if you told me that, because I would say, okay, you're mental. I mean, you cannot have this big of a of a passion, going against what? I mean, 10 persons, 15 persons. That's actually a lot of them. So yeah, good luck.
Yeah, even 10 years ago, I think, yeah, 10 years ago, yeah, I probably would have been, and I was actually, because I hadn't really gotten into YouTube yet. I wouldn't have thought it was that big a deal. Uh, but yeah, when it really, what did it for me, and this is going to be weird, was Trump losing in 2020. Not the first one. The first one I figured that one I kind of had a feeling he was going to win because if Hillary Clinton was going to lose to anybody, it was going to be to somebody like Donald Trump. She had a lot of negatives, and it was like watching the '90s beat itself up on, in politics. It was just the weirdest thing. You had this guy who was kind of a celebrity in the '90s, and she was obviously famous in the '90s because she was the first lady, and both of them had little bits of controversy around them. But because he had a show for 14 seasons on NBC, 14, 12. I think maybe 12 seasons. I don't know if he was on all 14. There was a huge chunk of the population that thought he was legitimate, that he was an actual businessman, and that was just an invention of NBC.
Yeah.
But in the second term when he ran, the number of people that voted for him again, that was the thing that made my eyebrows go up, because we watched a guy that for 4 years really didn't do anything. I mean, the government just sort of did its own thing, and he was just in the news all the time for saying stupid shit. But then he downplayed the pandemic. He got rid of the pandemic force. He was. I mean, there were steps that he did, and I don't know if anybody's ever figured this out. The number of people that could have been saved had they just gone with like George W. Bush's pandemic response. Not going back to Obama or some socialist savior or something like that. Just what George W. Bush had in place probably would have saved at least hundreds of thousands of people over what Trump neglected. And people voted for him again because they have this thing in their head, and you could see it at the rallies and stuff. It's a combination of right-wing politics and some identity politics about country music and being real Americans and loving Jesus and drinking beer out of a red Solo cup and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is just toxic as shit. Like I'm a hillbilly. I'm a kind of a redneck. I come from a country, I'm sunburnt. But the fact that the politicians use this kind of angle and use this image and stuff is kind of disgusting. So yeah, for me it's been eye-opening. I think 10 years ago I'd have been like, no. And when my brother was getting involved in YouTube, it was the same thing. Like, I don't need to watch those shows. I don't need to get involved in that. Those people are they're fringe. They're minority.
Right.
Nope, they're coming out of the woodwork stronger than ever. And they're making up reasons too, like, oh, there's critical race theory in the textbooks in my kid's school. Get rid of them, burn the witches, and put a bunch of ministers in there instead. Different states have different problems, but there's a lot of states that lean this way, and yeah, it's sad, it's scary, it's creepy. I think it's going to burn itself out in a couple of generations, but it's going to be a long time. It'll be long after I'm dead.
Okay, Jefferson, listen, thank you very much. It's been a super pleasure. It was really interesting, really funny. I think I should, make these, way more often with people that I have no fucking idea what they are. Because that was a really, really cool conversation. I really had a lot of fun. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry I made you nervous with that libertarian talk. I'm glad that we...
No. Actually, it was relieving to me, to find, okay, so... Not only you can turn from an extreme right-wing person to a more liberal, but you can also get out of being a libertarian. So it's something which opens my heart. So yes, there is hope. Not too much. There is hope. Okay.
Not too much. No.
Thank you, man. Take care.
If I didn't care more than words can say, if I didn't care, would I feel this way?